Hola, hola. My name is Neto Velasco, and this is the second episode of Coffee with Photographers. And today I am with Lynae, a photographer from Los Angeles. What's up, Lynae? How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am very good. Thank you for being here with me.
Yeah, of course. I really love, I don't think Neto would ever say this, but he did an amazing job of making this like a very appropriate, socially distanced and like, COVID safe
I know, yeah,
environment.
because everything going on, like look at the microphones.
Yeah, we have masks. Our mics have masks.
Our masks have
We're
mics.
outdoors in a park.
Mm-hmm.
This is the future.
I know, it's incredible. I started the podcast before the whole lockdown. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I want to talk to photographers, like see how they do their photography, what cameras they use, and for other photographers to listen to us. So I did a podcast in my garage with Liz Brett's, a very cool photographer from LA.
Yeah, her episode's great.
You've heard it.
I did, yeah.
Cool, thank you. Mm-hmm. And then I had some other photographers lined up for the podcast, and then the lockdown happened. So I reached out to them. I'm like, hey, for your safety, for my safety, like I'm gonna stop doing the podcast. And I've told you this, English is not my first language, so I'd rather do it in person because that way, like I think I can understand better, And so now I'm like, I still want to do the podcast. I did my COVID test, which was negative. I told you, I'm taking extreme precautions. We can do the podcast in the park. And yeah, I think we're safe.
We are. It feels very safe.
Good. That's the most important thing,
Yes.
that you feel safe and comfortable to do it. I remember me telling you, like, hey, if you don't feel comfortable, we don't have to do it.
Yeah, you were very, very considerate and thoughtful. And I think that is one important thing as people, navigate when we do stuff and how we do things, is proactively letting people know the conditions. A friend of mine, Mariah, had a piece at an art show called Blackness at a space in downtown. I think it's called Wohnzimmer. Okay. It's a German word for living room. So if anyone speaks German, they'll know that I'm saying it wrong. And, she's a really incredible photographer, and I wanted to support, but also I want to be careful and not be part of the problem.
Yeah,
and
of course.
It was so great because in the invitation, they made it very clear that there were like time frames we could come. There was a capacity. They had, when we got there, they had somebody checking everyone's temperatures. They gave us all hand sanitizer and gloves and masks when we got there.
That's great.
And it was a big space, and I think they only allowed like 15 people in there at a time.
Okay, that's incredible.
Yeah, and so that was like, I felt very safe, but you also don't, you don't want to. I've just been saying no to everything, except for that, because she was so clear about all the precautions.
That's incredible. I do appreciate people being cautious like that.
Yeah.
Because as you know, and as you've seen, like there's a lot of people that don't take those precautions, and at this point, like we can't do that. Like,
well, even just with, like you and Liz in her episode were talking about when you're shooting with women, and some of her work is nudes, and just letting people know what the deal is on the upfront, right?
Of course.
And you very proactively letting women know, I'm not shooting nude photography.
Yeah.
You're welcome to bring somebody, just to be considerate of not putting someone else in that position.
Of course, every time I shoot, it doesn't matter the gender, I'm like, please bring someone. Like you're allowed to bring someone, and especially because like if they bring someone, they feel safe, they feel comfortable.
Right.
And it's not like awkward or weird, and especially in this industry.
Yeah.
Like you know how it is. It's so difficult to trust someone.
Right.
Either the photographer or the model too. So, and I've heard so many weird stories.
Oh yeah.
And from close photographers that I've stopped talking to them because of like what I've heard that some models went through with them. So yeah, all of my shoots, like I don't shoot nude. I love that other photographers are doing, and they're great. Like that's their type of art. I don't. I just love clothes, like in a person like that. I think that gives the style. I love styling.
Yeah.
So I love like shooting outside, lifestyle pictures, and yeah, I don't shoot nude. Like I did once when I studied photography, because I went to school for photography in Mexico back in the day. And one of the class was like shooting nude, and yeah, it was fine. Like it was very artisty and everything, but I was like, I don't think this is my
Yeah, it's interesting. I've never had any desire to shoot other people nude. I've been in a nude shoot, maybe 2, I don't know, but definitely 1. And my friend Dustin did it, and I did 2 with him actually. We did 1 and it was, I think what really helped is we've been friends for a long time.
Yeah. Okay.
So I know him as a person, and I know he's not creepy.
Yeah.
So that helps.
Of course.
He's never hit on me. He had a girlfriend who I love, and she's terrific. And she was actually at the second shoot and helped style it.
Oh, that's perfect.
Which was super fun because I was wearing a motorcycle helmet, and there's nothing better. If you're shooting nude, really, it's so freeing to not have to worry about your face. Because
I can imagine,
you're already thinking about your body and how this looks and like what angle or whatever.
Yeah.
And to be like, oh great, I don't have to worry if like one eye is not as open as the other, or if my mouth's like a little contorted, or if I have like crow's feet or whatever you just don't have to think about that stuff. And so it's very liberating.
I never thought about that. I could never model being nude because I'm not very confident with my body. Like for instance, every morning I tell my wife like, oh, I really need to like lose my stomach, my love handles. She's like, you're fine. Like you're not like you're fine. But I have like this issue.
Well, yeah, because that's what media does, right? It's because the people who get photographed nude historically have been people with like perfect abs, men and women, right? Like that's what we've seen.
Yeah.
And so then it makes you go like, well, I can't be in that photograph unless I'm ripped. And I think it's funny because I wouldn't mind if somebody like took my photograph nude if it was like in a moment where they were like, oh, you look good, I'm going to take this photo.
Yeah.
But if I know I'm going to be in a shoot that's nude, it's like, okay, I am like working out every day, like no carbs, I'm drinking like 2 gallons of water.
I know.
And I'm very particular about it because that's a very different thing when it's like a shoot versus when it's candid.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so it's very
Which the
different.
type of photography that you do is candid.
Yeah, typically. So, wait, we never talked about our coffee. Are we supposed to?
So no. I mean, this podcast is called Coffee with Photographers. I named it that way because coffee for me, I'm shy. I'm a shy person.
Really?
And I'm anxious. Yeah, especially with people that I don't know. And especially because English is not my first language. I think it's that.
Yeah.
That English is not my first language. So coffee gives me that boost.
Yeah,
to
me too.
talk and to like chill out a little bit.
Which is funny, right? Because that's the opposite of the reason for coffee, but I'm the same way. And I honestly have sometimes I feel like coffee's helped with my depression too.
Okay.
Because that extra boost of energy. Because if you're depressed and tired, it's a double whammy. Like you're not, and then you're not going to feel good about how you spent your day because you were in bed depending on what kind of person you are. Some people are very comfortable relaxing, and I respect that because I think something about the way I was raised made me feel like every day is like a orange that you need to squeeze the most juice out of.
Okay.
But coffee really helps me just sort of get things going. And sometimes I'm fine without it. Sometimes I'm totally fine without it. And then days like today, I almost had a coffee before I came here. And then I was like, no, be strong. Just wait until you're there.
Okay.
Prove to yourself that you're capable of doing this without already a pre-caffeination.
And how did that go? Like before, right now?
Well, I'm doing better now than I was. I think I definitely, you texted me because you had to run an errand, and so we pushed by about 30 minutes. And it was the perfect opportunity for me to take a nap. And for listeners, like, it's only 12:30. It's like 1 p.m. on a Saturday, but by 11 a.m. I needed a nap.
That's good.
Yeah.
Like you don't need like a time frame like to do whatever you want. Like this,
dogs
like society
get to sleep all day.
I know.
Why can't we?
Exactly, but it's society that tells you like, oh, you need to be like on your game and grinding and hustling and doing this. It's like, dude, chill out.
Not my society, let me tell you. I've always thought that stuff. I've always thought that stuff was so corny.
I know.
Just because it's so unhealthy, and as a creative person, I think. I mean, we do come up with good ideas when we're under pressure. However, when we're burned out, nobody's coming up with their best creative work or photography when we're burned out. And if we're on a roll, that's one thing. But the idea of the whole rise and grind thing, I think it's important to get stuff done.
Yeah, of course.
At the same time, I'm like, it's also important to be a human and
Of course.
and sleep and maybe, make some jokes and things.
Yeah, totally.
So you were asking about the kind of work that I do.
Yeah, but okay, so yeah, I asked before we get into that.
Yes.
You don't drink milk, right?
No.
So that's like every time I do a podcast or I hang out with people, I like bringing snacks, right?
Oh, how nice of you.
So I'm
what a
like,
good mom.
Well, thank you. I am good. Yeah, that's a compliment. So I was like, hey, I'm gonna grab coffee because I know I need coffee. Which one do you drink? And then you were like, oh, I drink Rebbl. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, I hope so. That's how I say it.
I've never tried it. And it's great.
Oh, I'm so glad you like it.
It is good. I got the same one as you. You say get the
Rebbl Maca cold brew. There's a Rishi one also. It's not as sweet, and sometimes I go with that one just for the sake of not relying on having a sweet tooth so much.
Yeah.
It's not sort of a practice of like stoicism or for me to go, you know what, we don't need the sugar today. And there's no added sugar in here. I think it's just vanilla and coconut milk. Yeah, it tastes
very good.
But it is really good. And I wish that Rebbl would make these in a bigger bottle because there's those other ones, those big cold brew type bottles.
Yeah, I've seen them. I saw them
And I would
today.
love if they had those in that size because I feel I won't buy this every day because A, it's sort of expensive, and B, it's wasteful to like have this much plastic every day. So I usually make my own coffee at home.
Okay.
But yeah, there's no milk in this. I'm lactose intolerant, so it's better to not have milk.
Yeah.
But I do love, in normal times where you can like sit at a coffee shop, I love a good dirty chai.
Okay. Oh, delicious.
So delicious.
Yeah, that's good.
That or nitro cold brew. Those are sort of, because I like the fuzzy.
Okay. No, those ones like really like messed me up. Like I'm so hyped up.
They'll make you sick sometimes for sure. You have to take your own sort of temperature, your internal temperature on whether it's a day you can have a nitro cold brew, because certainly I think nitro cold brews, and then something about green tea also, if I have it on an empty stomach, it'll make me kind of sick.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So sometimes when the coffee's like super strong, like I start like gagging, like almost like throwing up.
Yeah.
And my wife is like, are you okay? But like every morning. I'm like, I'm fine. It's the coffee. I drank too much.
You're like, it's good for me, I swear.
No, you know what? There's this coffee, super good. I got it at Trader Joe's. It's called La Colombe.
Oh, yeah. That coffee's lovely.
And they have like this tiny cans.
Yes,
so I'm like,
and they're very cute.
Yeah, super cute. The packaging is great. I'm a graphic designer too, so I go by the packaging.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh yeah, this is super cool. So I got it. I drank like a little bit, and I was so messed up. I'm like, holy shit. And then I read it's like a triple espresso. And
that one's crazy.
Yeah.
That one's very crazy.
Yeah, I cannot finish it.
No, definitely not.
And my wife is the same way. She drinks decaf.
Okay.
Because even decaf is too strong for her. Like if she drinks not decaf, like regular coffee, like she gets so anxious. She's a very anxious person.
Yeah. So she probably doesn't have ADD.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
But she doesn't drink coffee. But yeah, this one is great. I'm happy you recommended it.
Well, thank you. Thanks for scooping it up for me.
Yeah, it gave me the boost, like to be more like chill and
good,
more confident with my English and all of that.
Good.
So, so let's talk about your photography.
Yeah,
I see your Instagram. I don't remember if I started following you or you started following me, but
I think I started following you because Roberto posted about you.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, so Roberto is my friend from Mexico, from the same town, Querétaro, and he moved to Seattle. Actually, he moved to Seattle like maybe a month before I moved to LA.
Oh, okay.
And he was like, I remember he did a tattoo on me because he's a tattoo artist. He did a tattoo on me on my elbow. Yeah, this skull right here.
Okay.
And he's like, yeah, I'm moving to Seattle in a week. I'm like, that's crazy. I'm moving to LA like in a month. He's like, oh, we should like keep in touch and like let's visit each other. And he has come to LA.
Yeah.
And to tattoo actually.
Yeah, a couple times.
Yeah, and because I used to work in a tattoo shop. I was the shop kid.
Okay.
Because when I first arrived here, I had to look like for jobs, like odd jobs like that. And it was great. It worked perfectly because when he came here, he was a guest artist at that shop.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So, and then he's in Seattle, and then I saw him taking like posting pictures with you. And I'm like, well, we're already following each other. That's crazy that we're friends and he lives in Seattle.
It's really lovely, which for listeners, you should look him up. He's Cougar Tooth on Instagram.
Yeah, he's amazing.
And he's a great tattoo artist.
Yep, and a super cool guy. And I think he's taking pictures too.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I think he has an account. He doesn't promote it that much.
Of course he doesn't.
But...
Very humble.
Yeah, super humble. But he is taking more pictures.
Good.
Yeah, I like that.
Me too.
I promote photography. Like, everyone should get a camera.
Yeah.
Everyone. Even if they don't want to make money out of it or
well, we do all have cameras, though, just in our phones.
Exactly.
And I think that has helped people... I think that that's made it a lot more approachable to people.
Yeah.
Because you get to experiment sort of quietly. I know when I first started taking photos... In fact, I started taking photos because I just needed to take a class.
Okay.
And I'd done the video program at the high school that I went to.
Uh-huh.
They had a video program and I was really into it, and I wanted to shoot skate videos is really all I cared about shooting. Oh,
that's incredible.
Yeah, I just wanted to shoot skate videos.
Uh-huh.
And I'd sort of toyed with the idea of shooting snowboarding videos and then was like, no, I don't know if that's for me. But I really want to shoot skate videos. And one of my closest friends, her husband is a really incredible skate photographer and has directed and produced and shot a lot of really great skate videos.
Wow.
His name's Remy Stratton. And so that sort of opened my eyes to that was something that you could do. Because before that, it was like, I just wanted to skate. Well, I'm horrible at skating. Like, I'm very, very bad.
I didn't know you skate. That's incredible. That's amazing.
Thank you. But I love doing it. And so when I learned that that's what he did for a living, because he'd been a professional skateboarder for a very long time, but then got very into photography and video. And I was like, there's another avenue that I could still skate and be in skate culture, but be doing something, right? Because otherwise it feels like, and similarly with regular films, like, the movie theater, in our heads, we're like, acting is the only job, and you forget that, like, somebody directed this, somebody wrote this, somebody
there's
did
so
the
many people behind the
scenes.
That's what I love, like, telling these stories, like, behind the picture, behind the camera, behind the photographer, like, all of these things that go on. And this, like, same thing happened to me with skateboarding. I used to skate when I was, like, a teen. Like, I still skate, but not as much as I used to.
Well, also, health insurance in America isn't very conducive to injuries.
I know. Yeah, and especially, like, I work with my hands, so if anything happens while skateboarding, I'm like, so I can't skate anymore. But, and I was not that good. I remember, like, all my friends that I used to skate, they were, like, super good. And I'm like, I'm not that good. So I grabbed my camera and I'm like, well, I can still be part of the scene.
Yeah.
And hang out with skateboarders.
Right. Be with your friends.
Exactly.
And, like, it's also part of skate culture is also, can I cuss on this podcast?
Yeah, sure.
You can. It's part of it's also just, like, fucking shit up. Like, you just enjoy that. You like being out late or out at weird hours and not around a bunch of people that are doing normal shit.
Yeah.
And that you can kind of just be with your friends and be mobile without the commitment of a bicycle.
Oh, totally.
So,
yeah.
Like, you don't
I understand what you're saying.
You can just bring it around with you.
And you know what? The community, like the skateboarding community, is so cool.
Yeah.
I remember, like, when I used to skate, I would go to skate parks, and instantly everyone was like your brother.
Well, that's because you're a boy. As a girl, when I was growing up, it was not that way. People were, like, very rude to you about skating.
Really?
Would constantly... I mean, any girl who's ever worn a metal shirt, like a metal band shirt, knows what that's like, because you'll just have dudes that you don't know. And definitely it's different now in 2020, but when I was growing up, because I'm 31, so early 2000s, people would walk up to you and be like, do you even name one song by that band?
No way.
And you're just like, bro, I'm just...
What?
It's just that kind of thing. And so as a girl, when someone would see you skating... people would be like, oh, well, then prove to me that you can do this.
Holy shit, prove to me? Like, what the, who are you?
Super annoying.
That's crazy.
And so it deterred me a lot from doing that kind of stuff, especially around other people. So I would usually go, I've always been sort of someone who does stuff on my own. So I would skate. My best friends in high school, it was like a group of us that all skated. Our friend Denise didn't, but, like, there was a girl, Jessica, that was one of my closest friends, and Jared and a few other people. We would always skate together because also it was two guys that were just very nice and never made fun of us and would help us and show us how to like do things.
I can't understand that. Like, what's the purpose of like hating or like doing like all these comments?
I mean, that's a great question.
Yeah.
It's very confusing to me as well. I think if we look at society in general right now, like why is anyone getting mad at other people for wearing masks? That's wild to me.
I know, it's so crazy. And growing up in Mexico, like I say, like the community is good because in Mexico, like a lot of people like talk very badly about Mexico. Well,
because they've never been.
And we do have, they've never been. And I understand, like Mexico does have like a very macho, like male society.
Yeah.
But the skateboarding community, I never saw like someone like attacking or like questioning.
Skate culture in Mexico, especially Mexico City, is like lovely.
It's
and
amazing.
also,
it's amazing.
When people talk shit on like the machismo thing for Mexican culture, Mexico's a big country.
Yeah.
It's like you can't compare. Like the differences in the places I've been in Mexico, like I've been to Mexico City, and then I've also been to Morelia, and like those are two very different places. They have
Super
like
different.
nothing in common.
Yeah, exactly. They're so different.
And so, and for people to get upset about any sort of machismo energy with Mexican men, I'm like, where do you live that men don't have that? Because in America, like, what do you think all these dudes in like big trucks with like gun stickers are?
Jesus,
right?
Yeah.
Like, what?
Like to be honest, I'm so intimidated of a lot of like men everywhere.
Of
like
course.
Mexico, here, so intimidated because like society, you know how it is. Like, oh, like a man has to be like strong and like big trucks or stuff like that. Like I feel so intimidated.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, so you started taking pictures because of the skate scene.
Well, that's why I started doing video.
Okay.
But then with photography, I graduated high school early, but I still needed 2 more classes. And it was an elective. And then I think I needed driver's ed or something done. I can't remember. Driver's education.
Okay.
It was either that or a health class. Because at whatever school district I was in, the requirements were driver's education and health education were like equal, so you could pick one.
Okay.
So I took a couple winter intersession classes at the community college where I was living, which is about 45 minutes north of LA. It's like in North LA County. And shout out College of the Canyons. And I was looking at the class schedule and I signed up I worked 2 jobs at the time. I was working at a salon and then at a Starbucks that was like 3 doors down from that salon.
Okay.
And what worked best with my schedule was there was a photography class early in the morning, I think 3 or 4 days a week. And I was kind of like, okay, I'll try it, because at that point too, I'd done video, and the kind of art forms that I really looked up to and respected as a kid were music and like painting and that sort of art.
Okay.
I never really respected photography, so it wasn't intimidating to me.
Okay.
Whereas like with music, I played music my whole life, but I was always so stressed when I was learning it because I felt like I had to be perfect.
Okay.
And with photography, I didn't have that pressure because I hadn't put it on this crazy pedestal in my head. So I would say probably the first pivotal moment for me for photography was my mom had lived in Denmark before I was born, and we went there when I was 7 to go see the family that she'd lived with there because she's very close with them. And I took a photo of my parents, my mom and my dad on the beach with the sunset, and I used the flash on the camera even though my mom told me not to, and it ended up being my mom's like favorite photo of them as a couple.
Wow.
Because they're illuminated and the sunset's in the background, right?
That sounds cool.
And that was sort of a moment for me of like, oh, I could make something. That's cool. I didn't know I could like make things, right?
Yeah.
And then the next moment was I have family. One of my uncles, he lives in Australia and married an Australian woman. And so he lives there. And we went out there when I was 10 because he was getting married.
Okay.
Or no, maybe it was after that. I'm trying to think. I must have been a little bit older. We went there once when I was 10 when he was getting married. But then my dad and I went back again when I was maybe 14 or 15.
Wow, that's cool.
Because my cousin was born. Like, you know, my uncle's, he and his wife had a baby. Well, it was around the time, man, I don't even know how I got it. It must have been, I must have had to mail in a check to get this camera because Teen Vogue had like a tech section or like a, you know, must have sort of things.
Yeah.
And there was this camera called like the Chi-Ease, and it was spelled like CHE-easy, and it was so ahead of its time. It was like the size of an iPhone.
Okay.
And I ordered it, and I think it must have cost $105, but I babysat a lot. I did a bunch of other, I did all kinds of things to like make money when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I bought that camera and I took it with me, and I took a few photos of like shipwreckage and some of the people who were indigenous there in Cooktown, who I'd spoken to on a walk one morning. And I was like, whoa, I actually really like this. So like those two things sort of boiled up, were like the thing underneath my motivation for taking the photography class.
Okay, yeah.
And then I took it and I got really into it because I think with the other art forms that I was interested in, it's really obvious when you make a mistake.
Yeah.
And so it's really scary. Like I play drums, and it's like when you're practicing and you make a mistake, it's very loud for everybody to hear.
Yeah, everyone like
everybody
knows. What the hell? What happened?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And my mom's pretty type A. So when I was a kid and I would be having like a school project, she would always be like, no, it has to be perfect, right? It has to be this way. And so I never really felt comfortable with making my own mistakes when it came to art.
I see.
Because it felt, she was an art major, so she felt like my daughter can't turn in this project if it's not perfect because I was an art major.
Oh my gosh.
And also she plays music, and so like
so much pressure there.
Yeah, a lot of pressure, because she used to ask me when I was learning how to play violin when I was like 7. She would be like, could you practice a little bit quieter because you're not very good.
Oh no.
Which I don't, she didn't mean any harm by it. My mom is also just she has really good hearing, so do I. She's very sensitive, so I know what it's like to have a sound great on you. Okay. And I get that. So I don't blame her. I think she was just sick of hearing this child like screech away at an instrument.
Yeah.
So with photography though, because the class I took was digital, it was also, I took digital because it was just less expensive than taking film. You didn't have to pay for all the development.
Yeah, I know.
And you could like borrow cameras for free and stuff from the school.
That's
and so
cool.
the digital classes were really great because your mistakes were not obvious to anybody.
Yeah.
You could just see them on the LCD screen and move on with your day and take another photo.
Yeah.
Like it was not,
true.
The stakes were not as high.
True.
And so that really, and you and Liz is her name, right? On the last episode?
Yeah.
You guys had talked about education, and I definitely agree with you. There's enough tools out there right now for online education, but I do think one of the valuable things about being in class was like the assignments that you have to do.
Yeah.
Versus like in an online class, you'll go, oh great, I'll keep that in mind. Like you're probably not going to go do it right then and there. Yeah. And I think Skillshare does this, which is cool, where like if you take a class there, you can submit your work.
Okay.
And so I don't know if other people can see it, but I think one of the cool things that taking a photo class taught me was being able to see my peers' work and hear them explain. And
True.
I don't know if you ever had to do that assignment that's like a classic photo 101 assignment where they're like, oh, go and take 10 pictures of the same thing, but at different angles.
Yes. Yeah. Of course.
And it was really cool because that made me, I have a really hard time with stuff like that.
Okay.
Like I have a really hard time about doing things differently and experimenting. That forced me, because then you have to take the 10 to just pass that assignment. That forced me to do it and like risk being wrong.
Yeah.
But then the cool thing was seeing what the other my other classmates were doing and going like, oh, I never thought of that. And I never thought of that. And so that helped me shift. I mean, it helped a lot on some of the fun stuff I do now because I experiment with like 360 photos and videos.
That's cool.
And so it helped me with that perspective of, oh, not everything has to be this normal way.
Yeah.
And so I appreciated that. And that really helped me open up more. And then I was in our like photojournalism department. I ended up moving down to Orange County. I was in photojournalism. And then the economy crashed. And photojournalism is just hard to do if you also have to work full time.
Yeah.
Because it's not like you can schedule journalism.
I know. Yeah.
Journalism has to happen when things are happening. So
I know, it's not like a 9 to 5
right,
and then
like,
you're done.
Well, and it's not like other classes where you're like, oh, I can just get up early and study. Like, no, you have to go. If the protest is happening now, you have to go now. It doesn't matter if you have a job.
Exactly.
So that was not working out for me. But I was really fortunate. I got a photojournalism scholarship for one of my semesters that helped offset the cost of school.
Nice.
Then I switched to sociology because that was easy and interesting, and I minored in marketing, which still let me take some creative classes.
Yeah.
And during community college, I had a shoot with a hip hop artist that I was really excited to photograph and interview, and my camera got stolen that morning.
What?
It was, I mean, I'd gone out partying that night, and when I got up in the morning to like get in my car, like my stereo was gone. I'd put in just so I didn't forget it, I'd put my camera underneath my seat, and the camera was gone. My skateboard was stolen. I was so heartbroken.
Yeah.
And what's so silly is that sometimes I put blame in the wrong area. And I was so heartbroken that I was like mad at cameras. And I didn't take photos for like 4 or 5 years after that because I was so upset about it.
Jeez.
And then I went through a breakup, and that person that I dated for like 2 years was just very stifling creatively. So he would want me to take photos of some stuff that he was doing, but if they weren't this, like, he didn't want me to do my style, he wanted me to do what was cool at the time. And so it was just really, it made me not want to take photos at all, because then you have someone around you essentially wanting the 2009 version of Hypebeast style, right? Of I want this, like, these colors, and why can't you shoot it this way, and da-da-da-da. And you're like, but that's not what I do. And so that was really, made me not want to take photos. And then I moved to San Francisco, and then I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to take photos again. Because I kept seeing things and going, oh, I want to shoot that.
Yeah, San Francisco's amazing.
Yes.
That's a very cool city.
Yeah, and I lived in a really cool area that called Ocean Beach, and like the outer Richmond. So I was like at 47th, which was really close to the ocean. So you see a lot of weird stuff out there. So I got a camera again, and I started shooting again.
Film or digital?
Digital, yeah. So I never started shooting digital or film until the last few years. And I'd basically, after around that time, because what I'd been shooting as like, you know, pre-camera thievery was skate stuff. A lot of what I later learned was called street photography. But to me, it was just like, oh, I can't not take a photograph of this. And sort of like the punk scene in Orange County. So I had friends that were like punk artists, and I would go to their shows at the observatory or wherever and take their photos.
There's a very cool punk and hardcore scene over there, huh?
There is, definitely, yeah.
I've heard about it, yeah.
And so in San Francisco, I was doing more street photography, not that intensely, but then I kept getting hired for whatever reason. I don't know how this started happening, but people started hiring me to take food photos. And they would be like, hey, I know that you take photos. Can you... My first client was a company called Cabo Chips. And so I was doing work for them, doing a lot of like salsa and tortilla chip photos and things like that. And it was really fun. And then I got more and more clients that were food clients, and then eventually I got recruited to do photography for Starbucks.
That's incredible.
Yeah, which was
so you were shooting
wild.
Street, then this company said, hey, I know you're a photographer. Can you shoot the chips and salsa? And then more.
And they were a friend of mine, so it's not like it was a random company. It was a friend of mine, and he's really great. He's also Colombian, and he was like, hey, do you want to do this? Because they needed help with social media, and I've always done social media for work. In some capacity, and so he was like, could you take the photos also?
That's incredible.
And I, for whatever reason, I just said yes, and then was like, oh my God, I don't know anything about food photography. So I started learning, and that's sort of how I learned how to cook also.
That's great. That worked perfectly.
It worked out really great, and so...
And then you landed Starbucks. How did that happen? Like, did they reach out like through?
Well, my friend Lynae saw that they were looking for a social media photographer for someone's maternity leave. She then, I think, just replied to that tweet and was like, hey, Lynae, you know, like at Lynae Cook, is this something you'd be interested in? And I was like, oh, actually, yeah. Because I'd started my own agency at the time, and I wasn't looking for work. And at that time, I was going to pivot from being a content-focused agency to being an influencer management company. Because I had a lot of friends who were influencers but didn't know how to ask for money and didn't know how to have those conversations. And I'd worked with artists in the past. And so I was like, okay, I can do that.
That's so cool. That's super cool.
Well, then Starbucks spared me from having to start basically from scratch on a company. And I was like, great. And so my boyfriend at the time and I moved to Seattle. I was shooting for them, which was really fun, very rewarding. Getting to see how, because I'd always been sort of like a one-person show. So getting to see how it was when you got to ideate with other creatives and discuss your concept with a creative director and sell them on it and learn how to take feedback and learn when to push back on some of that feedback and defend your ideas. That was all super valuable. And there was a really great creative director there named Breyer who was like, just really helped me understand how to talk about commercial type of work.
Okay.
And understand how to meet a brief, because prior to that, it was sort of like, well, I'm going to do some tortilla chips at the beach. And I don't have to explain myself to anybody.
That's great when you work as a team.
Yeah.
Because like your mind gets this different perspective. And as you said, like you need to defend your idea and prove why you had that idea.
Right.
And then with their idea, then you get to a middle ground and then you're like, oh yeah, you're right. And I understand exactly what you're saying by being like a one-man army, because like I went to college for graphic design.
Oh, okay.
In the morning, and then at the same time, I went to college for photography at night.
Okay. Wow.
And then I'm like,
when did you sleep?
Oh, well, I was young.
Day? Oh, okay.
I was young.
Young.
Yeah, I
didn't need sleep.
No, I didn't need sleep, and it was something that I was so passionate about. So graphic design is super like amazing, and then photography is amazing. So I was living like my best life.
Yeah.
Right? Like learning shit that I was interested in.
It's energizing.
Yeah. And then I started working in an agency in Mexico, and the reason why they hired me is because I could do it all. Like I could do the graphic design, like let's say a client wanted a logo and a website. So I could do like the whole branding.
Right.
Like the logo, business cards, code the website, and also take the pictures of whatever product or service this client is. And that was great, but it was only my perspective. I didn't have anyone like to share ideas or to do.
Or for someone to go, hey, this is what's missing.
Exactly.
This could be better and challenge you. That kind of stuff is hard because then you also don't. It's also overwhelming because you're sort of switching gears a lot between graphic design and photography and putting these ideas together and making them cohesive, that you end up getting a little creatively burned out.
Oh my gosh.
And so the contract I had with Starbucks was 6 months. And initially I was like, oh, hopefully this will turn into a full-time job. And honestly, I'm so glad it didn't, because it also taught me that I can't do sort of the same thing. And even though there's seasonality and new products or whatever, when it came down to it, it was still photography for one brand that had like a pretty similar audience across, because I was doing Evolution Fresh at first, which is their juice brand.
Okay.
Which I got to do a really cool project with storytelling around their sourcing. So I got to go to an apple orchard and like talk to the guy who owns it.
That's
and
great.
Talk about how apples are grown efficiently and all that stuff. And that stuff was really cool. But I think for me it came down to like, I'm using my creativity to build someone else's company to sell more stuff. Yeah. And it's just, that's fine when it's project based, but when that's your everyday work, I didn't have the creative energy at the end of the day to do stuff that I cared about. Okay. And if product photography was something I was passionate about, maybe that would have been like a driving, you know, inspiring thing for me. But when the photography that you like doing is weird and street-based and live music, it's not very inspiring when you go from being like, let's do something that'll be beautiful on Instagram and inspiring to Pinterest people.
I know. So you did that for 6 months.
So I did that. It ended up going a little bit longer. I did that for 7 months.
Okay.
I also then learned that a lot of times large companies give the work that's really fun to agencies. And so there was a guy there named Mike Reeder who was kind enough to put in a good word for me at an agency where I actually, because of the experience there, positioned myself to do more of social strategy work instead of creative work. Okay. So that way I could keep my creativity to myself. Yeah. Selfishly. And so I was at an agency and then sort of just doing my own work, and I was shooting for bands in town a lot. Oh, that's amazing. Which was super fun,
Was that in Seattle?
That was in Seattle,
that's incredible.
Yeah, it was really fun. I was shooting for bands in town, and then my friend Avery called me, and he was like, hey, I have this idea for a podcast. Do you want to be my co-creator and produce it with me? And I was like, yeah, sure. And I'd literally never even listened to a podcast. Okay. In retrospect, podcasts are basically just radio shows on the internet. So I've been listening to podcasts my entire life, right? Just over airwaves, essentially. Avery is a really great photographer and does much more editorial style work than I do.
Okay.
And so we ended up getting a sponsor almost immediately, like before we'd even launched, which was great. And so we were able to use that money to pay for our trip to New York and to Paris.
Man, that's amazing.
Yeah, we got super lucky. And
that's so cool.
Yeah, and so we were doing street style photography at New York and Paris Fashion Week.
That's incredible. That's like the dream.
Yeah, it was totally the dream because I also am somebody that I have a hard time doing anything for fun. So like, unless we are accomplishing something, I probably won't want to do it. Like, unless it's going to be really magical. When someone, even my friends, if they're like, actually my friend, his name's Anthony, but his artist name is Fat Tony.
Okay.
I think one of the first times we hung out, I was like, let's hang out, but I have to like pick up these totes I had screen printed. So do you want to just come run errands with me? And so like, that's sort of and my cousins, like I'll hang out with them and be like, yeah, but great, let's go on a walk while we're doing it. Like we're not just going to sit down. So, so I would have never gone to just see the lore of New York and Paris Fashion Week. Like I probably would have never gone to Paris on my own because there's no productive reason for me to go.
Of course.
And so I'm really glad we did that together. It was super fun.
That's
Our work was
cool.
featured. Our sponsor was We Heart It, which was this site that was really popular for a while.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course I remember that.
Yeah, it was like a very popular site for a while. And so our work was there and then obviously a lot of brands and stuff end up sharing your work because you're there shooting. And it was a really, really great time.
And you were still shooting digital?
Yeah, and I was still shooting digital. And my dad has a friend who I actually don't really like that much. And he'd given me a film camera. But I'm a Taurus, and I'm very stubborn. And on the simple fact that I just didn't really like that guy, I didn't want to give him like the satisfaction of knowing I was using the camera, which is so stupid. And then one day, and also sometimes in my personal life and career life, I'd been having a really hard time, and just emotionally. And so when you're depressed, you also don't want to try anything new.
Yeah, true.
And I mean, when I'm depressed or just worn out, I can't even watch a new movie. Like it's like really hard for me because I'm like, no, it's too much anxiety. I just need to watch something familiar.
Like in your comfort zone, right?
And so I end up watching just Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill over and over. It's really and
great movies, by the way.
Wayne's World also, which is another favorite.
Amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And and I don't know if you've ever seen Volver, but it's like with Penelope Cruz. One of my favorite movies.
I've seen the cover.
Yeah,
I've never seen the movie.
I watch that movie probably 4 or 5 times a year.
Okay, I gotta watch it.
You definitely should. So eventually, one day, I was like, you know what? Actually, in fact, it comes back to my friend's husband, Remy, who is the skate photographer and videographer.
Okay.
Finally, one day, I was down in Orange County, and I was like, hey, I brought this film camera with me. Can you just show me how to put the film in?
Okay.
So he did. And then I started shooting, and it's my first film camera, and I still have it. It's a Minolta SRT 102.
Okay.
And so it's all manual, right?
Yeah,
so you have to also keep all that stuff in mind.
Yes.
And thank goodness the first roll that I shot turned out really good.
It did?
It did. Because had it not,
that's crazy.
Had it not, I probably wouldn't have continued. I probably would have been so bummed out.
That's crazy because I remember my first film, I think it was all trash. Like I didn't.
Because it was probably your first time taking photos also, right? It was your first time shooting manually versus when I learned photography, I'd only ever shot on manual. And so now I switched to I use a Fuji now, and I actually like their, I can change their settings to be sort of automatic, and I'm putting that in air quotes. But I had a Canon for a long time, and maybe it's because it was that model or whatever. I didn't like the auto.
That was a digital one.
Yeah, it was a digital.
Okay.
When I was younger, I had one of those, and then I switched to Nikon, and then I switched back to Canon, and then to Fuji, and I've never looked back. Now,
which Fuji one?
It's the Fuji. I think it's like, oh my gosh, what is it? I've had it for so long. I want to say it's like the XT. Okay. Fuji XT1. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think
it was that because I rented the Pro because at Glazer's in Seattle, it's this camera store up there. They're cool because they let you rent it, and if you like it and buy it, they take the rental fee out of the purchase.
Way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
And so I rented the Pro, and I didn't care for it that much, and then I rented the XT1, and I liked it a lot.
Man, Fuji is so good.
They're so good.
I've been using Canon all my life.
Yeah.
My grandma gave me my first film camera.
Yeah.
Which that's how I learned photography, through film. and it was great. And then when I did the switch to digital, I went with Canon because that's what I
Well, that also
was
is what
used
everyone
to.
was saying to use.
Yeah.
For ages.
Yep.
Everybody was like, it's all about Canon, it's all about Canon.
Yeah.
And then on occasion, you'd find people that were Nikon
Yeah.
fans, and they could convince you, which is what happened to me. I got convinced, and then I got one, and I hated it. Sony does an amazing job with their cameras.
It does.
And so does Fuji. And the reason the guy sold me on it at Glazer's was he was like, look, I think Fuji was one of the first ones that did a mirrorless digital
Okay.
that had interchangeable lenses, but then it also had like an equivalent of AirDrop built in. Like, you know how you have the
What?
Wi-Fi cards?
Yeah.
So this was...
I remember having one of those.
Yeah. And this was this must have been like 2015.
Okay.
Fuji was already making them that you could just drop them to your phone.
That's great.
And I was like, this is perfect, because I hate
Yeah.
going through, like, it just makes it very laborious. And so, and then he was like, and their glass, like their lenses are really good, and they're way cheaper than the Canon and Nikon ones. And I was like,
true.
sold. Because also the other irritating thing about Canon and Nikon is that the cameras were so big.
Oh my God. Yeah, I know.
And so...
Also, the lenses are huge.
The lenses are huge, and I like to get up really early and go on like walks or bike rides and then shoot then, and like very odd hours.
Yeah.
So it's just not, and in a lot of cities and stuff. And so it's just not very safe being a girl by yourself with this big camera.
I can imagine that.
And
yeah.
so,
of course.
and you can try by using like a pancake lens or whatever to make it smaller, but really it's still very obvious.
Yeah.
And one of my really close friends, his name is Marshall. He's an incredible photographer.
Okay.
He'd sort of taught me a lot about just relaxing and going with my own intuition with photography.
Yeah.
And he used to always shoot on a pancake lens for the discretion also.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, okay, because a lot of the other people I was around were shooting on these huge lenses, and I felt like it was really just to show off.
Yeah,
like, it
most
was
of
really
the time
just sort
it is.
of like camera bro culture is what it was.
Yes, that
It was a lot
exists.
of that. It totally exists.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
I
crazy.
mean, for years and years and years, I was the only girl in the photo pit at shows, and I would
Okay.
have dudes like shouldering me and pushing me out of the
Oh,
way.
I hate that.
And like hitting me in the heads with their cameras and stuff. And you're just like, and being like, oh, what is that? Da-da-da. And they treat you like just because your camera's smaller and your lens is smaller,
Yep,
that there's
yep.
no way you could be taking good photos.
I know, they
And
do
I'm like,
that.
no, you're just a nerd. Like, which there's nothing wrong with being a nerd, but like, you don't have to be like sort of like a tech asshole about
Yeah,
things. And like,
exactly.
you're not. Sometimes when people, you're not a better photographer just because you know more of the tech stuff.
Yeah.
And also, why does anyone care if someone's a better photographer? I don't get that.
I know.
Like,
I know.
I've never looked at someone else's work and gone like, ugh, I'm better than them, or
I
like
know.
they're better than I am, and I'm angry.
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, I just had my friend Andre on my podcast. He's for sure a better photographer than I am. I'm not upset about it.
Of course
His
not.
work is beautiful. Also, we don't shoot anything alike.
Yeah.
He's taken time to learn about studio stuff and lighting and all that. And
Okay,
I'm
okay.
like over here just being like, I think I have a white poster board. I'll use it as a reflector. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, but that's a
jam.
great thing. I love meeting people like that, and that's why I started this podcast. Like, I want to learn about like other photographers. I'm not trying to steal your clients, because that's one
Oh,
thing.
yeah, no.
That's one thing. Like, a lot of photographers like think, at least in Mexico, it is like this, and I've seen it here too. Like, I'm not trying to steal your secrets.
No.
Which I don't understand why you have secrets.
No.
But I'm not trying to like. I'm not gonna contact your client like, hey, like I should better than this person.
That stuff is
Nothing like
weird
that.
to me. Like,
I know.
I
know.
you know what? And I will say that I did have that happen once.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't really care, because also I was like, whatever, dude. Like,
Yeah.
there was somebody who was also a concert photographer when I was living in Seattle.
Uh-huh.
I think that he'd asked me, like, hey, I really want to shoot this show. Do you looking for a photographer? And I was like, oh, that's great. I'm actually super slammed and would love to not shoot that show. Do
Okay.
you want to I can put you in touch with like the company I'm shooting for.
Oh, okay.
And then you know what? After I did that, it was very, very weird. We'd kind of seen each other around. After I introduced him, I noticed he started shooting for them all the time.
Oh.
And would like claim shows sort of before I'd ever gotten a chance to do it.
Huh.
And then also unfollowed me. And I was like,
Oh, shit,
bro,
like,
I was
okay,
you feel
he
guilty
was
or
into
something?
something.
And I didn't really care.
Yeah.
But it just sort of says a lot about somebody.
Of course.
Because I would never,
No.
if somebody that you photograph for then hit me up, I would be like, hey, they hit me up, but I want to make sure that, like, you're cool with them.
Yeah, exactly.
And B, I want to make sure that they're not, I don't know, it's just a weird thing to me.
It's just, like, ethics, like, as a professional, not even as a photographer. Like,
if that's someone's suspicions, though, it tells me a lot about that person and what they would do.
I know.
Because I'm like, oh, is that the kind of person you are? Because
Jeez,
I would
crazy.
never, ever, ever, it would just never occur to me, like, oh, I'm going to steal this. Because also there's plenty of work to go around.
I know. There's work for everyone.
Like, it's just it's a weird thing to worry about to me. I don't really worry about what other people are doing. There was a quote, I think DJ AM said it, and he was like, he was an amazing DJ.
Yeah, of course.
He said something where he was like, I love that. I wonder if the mics are picking up the ice cream.
I don't know if the mics are. There's an ice cream guy.
Yeah,
in the
I know.
park.
It's like childhood. This is great.
I know.
And he said something once where he was like, I don't worry about teaching other people how to do things because, like, I'm not worried about other people getting better, basically. Like, I'm not worried. If they get better than I am, then good for them. Like, they put in the work. They deserve it. And that's okay. And I can't imagine, like, what kind of basketball coaches would they be if they were, like, worried about the children being better than them? It's just a weird thing. And so Andre, on his episode, he and I talk about, it was cool because he was really open. And I checked with him before we recorded, like, hey, is it cool if I talk to you about how you price jobs and, like, at what point in your career did you get an accountant and start an LLC and stuff like that?
That's great. I have to listen to that episode.
Oh yeah, I'll send you the episode. And so he shares, like, the questions he asks, which I think is all really important. My friend Sunny is a really great photographer. She shoots mostly live music.
Okay.
And she was really honest with me about day rate stuff because I was not charging. I was like, oh, no wonder why I was picking up so much work at South by. My day rate at South by was way lower than other photographers.
I see.
And I had no idea.
Yeah. Did you shot South by Southwest?
I did. I'm so glad I did because also it was last year.
It was last year. That's incredible.
So, like,
I had the opportunity to shoot South by Southwest too, but I think it was like 5 years ago. 2000. I don't remember. Incredible. That was my first time.
Yeah,
there.
and it was. I would venture to say it was probably more fun back then. Like, there was a very good run of South by. I think it's still fun. The music part isn't what it used to be, just because it got too corporate, and so they've scaled it back, which I think is cool. But I was really excited because I got to shoot the tech part of it.
That's great.
And so I was shooting, and it was all fun stuff. And then I got to go, one of my good friends, his, like, artist name is Open Mike Eagle. He was doing a show with StubHub with De La Soul. And so I got to go to that. And I think that was one of the only music things I went to. And that was super fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah, but I got to shoot for the, I'm really into tech stuff.
Yeah, me too. I love tech stuff.
And so I got to photograph, I think it was actually for the Travel Board of Vancouver or something like that, for the AR/VR Association of Vancouver, and
that's cool.
It was really fun. I mean, it was certainly not creatively riveting, but in terms of getting to sit and, like, watch those panels all day, that was fun.
That's amazing.
I got to shoot Comic-Con one year
and
shoot all the panels, and, like, one year I shot for Marvel and I shot their panels, and that was really fun. Honestly,
that is incredible. How do you get these clients? Like,
how do any of us get them? It's all weird stuff. Like, it's always just knowing somebody. I don't think I've ever gotten a client from reaching out to people.
So it's like networking and all of this. Yeah.
I also think it helps that I'm a very outgoing person.
Yeah, I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, I think that helps that I'm chatty.
Yeah.
And also, to be totally blunt, I think having bright red hair makes people remember me more and, like, a unique name. Like,
I know.
Because certainly my photography is not, like, nobody's asking me to shoot an ad campaign, right? Like, it's not that kind. And if they were, like, I could see myself doing sort of editorial work for brands that are also make sense to me. Like, certainly not the brands that most people pay attention to. Yeah. I mean, I would lose my mind if I could photograph for, like, Born and Raised or like Fucking Awesome, or, like, skate brands, really. Like, skate and streetwear brands, but not streetwear not streetwear in terms of like fancy streetwear, like streetwear in terms of like real deal has been around for a while.
Got it. I would
love to shoot, or like, I mean, like I know you shoot for Vans, like that kind of stuff to me is super cool because it's much more up my alley.
Yeah.
If somebody asked me to shoot something for a luxury brand, and they wanted me to do it in their style, I'd be like, no.
Yeah,
like,
that would feel
too
weird.
Scary.
I know, that would feel so weird.
If they were like, hey, do what you do, I'd be like, okay, cool. But that's just not really.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
I would be freaking out. I would be like so anxious.
Yeah.
Like probably throwing up before the photo shoot.
It would honestly tempt me to like take a Xanax, and I've never taken that, but I would be tempted to, just because I'm like, how else am I supposed to separate my nerves and think about this?
Compared to like when you work with the brands that you identify with, you're like, yeah, this is me. Like, I'm not nervous. Like, like this is me. This is my lifestyle, my stuff. Like, I got this.
Yeah, and it's more true to how I already shoot. So I'm already, most of my photography is stuff that I see when I'm out and about at weird hours.
Okay.
And then any of the photographs that I take of people are usually on film. And they're usually either friends of mine or like people in my neighborhood. So when I was living in Seattle, I lived in Pioneer Square, and there were sort of like just a lot of people that were sort of institutions in the area. There's a guy, Lewis, who managed the building, sort of like the cleanliness and the loading dock of the building next to us. And he would always, like, we would just always have great conversations at like 6 a.m. about all kinds of stuff. And so I'd be like, hey, can I take your photograph? Because he was just such an awesome dude. And like a lady who worked at the diner downstairs named Wendy, who has, this woman must have been smoking like 2 packs a day for the last 50 years because she has the most amazing throaty voice where it's and you're just like, you're incredible. So it's very much stuff like that. I do sort of take, I mean, I lived in downtown LA before I left and moved to San Francisco.
Okay. Downtown is great.
Downtown is great. I loved it. It was definitely, there was no, I mean, at the time there were just a couple bars down there. You know, it was very much people, a bunch of people were like, you're living in downtown, gross. Like a lot of people like wouldn't come down, which was fine with me. I lived at 6th and Alameda, sort of at the base of the 6th Street Bridge. And I've noticed over the years, a lot of people will shoot, they'll go to areas they're not familiar with, like downtown or Pioneer Square or the Tenderloin in San Francisco, and photograph people who are living on the street. Okay. And that kind of thing to me is, I would say 90% of the time, very disrespectful. And so I sort of have a problem with it. Okay. Unless you're showing those people in their humanity.
Yeah, of course.
Or unless, like, there has to be a really good point. And I definitely have sort of scolded people before when I've seen them doing it where I live, just because to me, I'm like, hey, these are people. Yeah. They're asleep in like their only home. This is not their dream, right? Nobody's like, oh, I can't wait to grow up and like camp out under the bridge. That's not what people are. And so I call it poverty porn because it's really exploiting people, especially in this age of Instagram. Like, where people are just putting that on their Instagram. And I'm like, did you do anything? Like, or did you just go and take advantage of that area?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, so I think I'll take photographs of certain people if we have a relationship and a conversation, and typically I'll go like, hey, you know, I can bring you whatever, and can I take your portrait and things like that. But I just think that kind of stuff is a little bit swervy to me. So what I'll do instead, though, because I do think what's really interesting is, to me at least, with some of my photographs, is like the stuff that happens around that, right? Yeah. And the stuff that happens where you have this clash in a lot of areas where there are a lot of people who are living on the streets, but then those are typically also a lot of areas that people go and party in. Yeah. And so there's these weird things that you see where it's like, you know, one of my favorite photos that I've taken is, it's like a pink wig in the gutter. Okay. Or just things like that. And like there was one, say, what I think was like a cheese Danish or something, but with like a cigarette put out in it. And just weird stuff like that where you're like, oh, these are just weird things that we see when we have somewhere that the city has decided to just not clean up. Yeah. Downtown LA is definitely a weird place, and it has weird things crushing. Like that. It's like very devastating. Yeah. And so a lot of my photography is around that, but in the most sort of respectful and That's great to hear. I mean, I hope that I'm being respectful, but sort of in the sense of like, it's this weird stuff that people don't see, because when people, are there, they're there to have a good time. And so I would have people that I work with come into my neighborhood and go like, oh, this neighborhood's so cute. It's too bad about all the homeless people. And I was like, yeah, it is too bad. But like, it's too bad that we don't take good enough care of each other as humans. That, you know, that this person's in this situation.
Yeah, totally.
Because people would say it in a way where they're like, oh, it's just too bad they're ruining the view. And you're like,
oh
no,
my
bro,
gosh.
that's not what it is. Like, it's too bad that
Holy smokes.
we don't live in a society that makes sure that people have a good foundation.
I know, that we take care of each other.
So,
that's crazy. Oh my God.
And so most of my portraits are typically of people I know, and if I take a portrait of someone I don't know, I try to get their information so that way when I get the film developed, I can send it to them.
Oh, that's so nice.
So that they can see that they're being shot in like a respectful,
of course, not just exploiting.
So, and I really, I stopped shooting. I was shooting a lot of live music for a long time, and I loved it. And then there was a very specific moment where I was at a show, and this would happen sometimes. I remember there was a hint of it. I saw this band that I really like called Bad Cop, Bad Cop.
Okay.
And they were opening up for the Interrupters.
Oh, nice.
And they're both, I mean, the Interrupters, the lead singer, Amy, is obviously a woman. Bad Cop is an all-woman band.
Yeah.
And I remember watching them and going like, wait a second. If I spent more time playing music and less time taking photos of other people playing music, I could be doing this. But instead I'm here, you know, as a fan, obviously, you know, and like, even though I was going to those shows for free because I was photographing them, I would still a lot of times buy merch or whatever, you know, like I got a Bad Cop hoodie at that show, which I wear a lot. And, but there was a very specific moment during one of Tyler, the Creator's tours, because I've photographed him a few times, and we have quite a few mutual friends, and we're around the same age. And I was photographing him, and in fact, I think what struck me the most was that his set, like the setup for his tour was these like giant, you know those kids blocks that have the letters on them?
Yeah.
Was those. Well, when I was in high school, my friend Jared and I had this this thing that we did where we made like skate videos and shirts for our like brand or whatever. Like it sounds corny now, but at the time we were just doing it. We weren't even doing it to be cool. We were just like, oh, this is fun. We can like make shirts. And we did this shirt, and I don't know, how old are you?
34.
Okay. So I don't know if this happened in Mexico also, but there was like a time where everybody was being like, oh, that's so random. That's so random.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Well, we both thought that was like kind of corny and annoying. So we made a like, and it was his idea. What we were doing was called Random Skateboards, but it was like RANDUM, like dumb.
Okay. That's cool.
And so we did this shirt that was like kids' letter blocks, but it said Random Skateboards on it.
That's cool.
And so when I saw Tyler jumping off those blocks, knowing we're around the same age, knowing we have mutual friends, I was just like, bro, if I spent more time doing the stuff that I like, and being creative, and less time worrying about like, am I being responsible? Do I have money in my bank account? Like, which is important stuff, right? Financial responsibility is important, but I've always been like, oh damn, like if I don't take care of me, who will? Not even realizing that I'm very fortunate to like have a grandma with like an extra room and, you know, family that like has space for me if I needed it, but I always felt like that wasn't an option. And I was like, wait a second, I could be up there. Like the only thing stopping me is that I haven't thrown myself into this creatively. And I think that was the last show that I shot.
Well, that's crazy. That's when you you started focusing more on the music.
That's when I started
on making stuff.
Like I left that show, and it was a good show, very high energy. One thing I love about Tyler's shows is that Tyler, Rage Against the Machine, and Run the Jewels are always guaranteed to have a good pit. And like if there is one thing I love, it's like, you know, leaving a show with some bruises. Like it's very nice. And I left that show and I rode my bike to the practice studio that my friends and I shared up the hill from where I lived. And I must have played drums for like, and just messed around with the music stuff in there for like 3 hours just to get that energy out. Yeah. And ever since then, cool. I've been very focused on music and acting, and photography hasn't taken a full backseat. There's actually some projects I have in mind that I want to do. There's a photo series I've been doing with sort of like the waste of like after you cook, like that food that's there.
Okay, whoa.
I'll send you some of the photos.
So interesting.
It's super, I came up with it one day. My ex and I had this agreement that because he's very good at cooking, like very, very good at cooking.
Cool.
My cooking pales in comparison. I can make like diner food and he can like cook for real.
Nice.
And so we had an agreement that he would do all of the cooking always, but every Sunday I would make cookies. And so one day I was making these like lemon rosemary cookies and I looked and the closest thing to put this stuff in when you're, that compost stuff was like a wine glass, like a stemless wine glass. So I threw the eggs and the rosemary and like the lemon rind in there.
Oh.
And then I looked at it, I was like, whoa, that's beautiful. So I took a photo of it and then I just started doing that on occasion. And then my neighbor in Seattle, it's funny because they're actually, my ex and my neighbor are both Libras.
Okay.
And he was a really good cook too. And so what he would do is he would do this thing where like him and his friend Wendy would like cook through a whole cookbook.
Okay.
And I would come over and help, but I'm not very good, which is sad because my dad's a chef. So it's like very sad that I'm not good. And my last name is literally Cook. You'd think I'd be better. Yeah. But they're making like gourmet food. And I'm over here like, I could chop and dice for you. Like, but I don't know if you want me to make some kind of like roux. Like, don't trust me to make a good gravy, And so I would do it sometimes with the things that we had left over when I would cook with him. And so I really like that series. And then I got really into 360 stuff where I've been taking like a 360 camera.
Okay. Which one do you use?
I use the Ricoh Theta.
Okay.
And it's sort of like, it's like tall and skinny kind of. And then there's a waterproof case I got for it that has like a round housing at the top. And what I've been doing with it is playing around with like micro environments.
Okay.
And so if you go on my Instagram, there's, in the highlight section, there's one that says 360. And so I would take it to the aquarium and put it in the tide pool of the aquarium and like let an anemone like suck onto it and then pull it away.
Cool. That is so cool.
And things like that. And then what made me get it actually was coffee. That's the reason I bought the camera. Was because I'm obsessed with black tea and with coffee, how when you pour the milk into it, it does that like amazing sort of bloom.
Yeah.
And so I got it so that I could put the 360 camera in there.
Oh, that's cool.
And so what I started doing was making coffee. This is so wasteful of me. Like making coffee and putting it in a vase, like a round vase, and then holding it's a very tedious endeavor. I need some kind of contraption that goes sideways that can hold the camera like this so I'm not like digging my hand into it. And then like slowly drizzling. What looks best I've found is whole, what is it? Like heavy whipping cream. Because the heavy cream like blooms out better. If you throw in some sad almond milk, it's a little, it's not as rewarding. So I started doing stuff like that. And I did another one where I put peanut butter around it and let my friend's dog lick it.
Oh,
so if you're watching it in VR, it's like upsetting.
Holy smokes.
There's just like a dog.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I've started playing around with that and I really enjoy it.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
So that's what like you're actually like doing right now.
That's what I'm doing for my own creative sort of things with photos. There's a self-portrait series I think I'm going to do.
Okay.
And then I've been meaning, I got an ant on me. I've been meaning to submit for more, just different kinds of shows and things like that. And I honestly just haven't done it in a while.
Yeah.
I think with street photography, some of that stuff is better to hold on to and like wait a decade. Yeah. Because the value of nostalgia.
Yeah, of course. That makes sense.
That kind of stuff. When you see photos that you're like, I know that. But when you see photos of people that you're like, oh wow, that was 10 years ago, I could tell by the clothes or whatever. Yeah. It feels different.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's sort of there's like a lot of ideas that I have, but I think to me, because my band's record is done and like we're slowly releasing it, and with acting stuff, like that stuff to me time-wise is a little bit more pressing. Okay. And with photography, I'm kind of in a place where if people hire me for stuff, we can have some conversations about how to do it, but I really want to keep some of that energy to myself. So like if it seems like a strenuous project, I'll pass it on to a friend who I know is qualified for it. But then there's some stuff that's really fun to me that I would happily do, which is more of like lifestyle type things or whatever.
I see that.
But if someone hit me up for like product photography right now, I would probably send them to like a friend who does it, because I'm like, what? That seems very stressful to me.
Yeah, right now.
The money would be cool, but like somebody else would be much happier. Yeah.
And how are things with the band? Where are you? Like, are you guys rehearsing right now? What are you guys?
So we're not, because of COVID. My bandmate. What's beautiful is that my bandmate So we wrote our album.
Uh-huh.
I was in the midst of like a very multi-year depression.
Okay.
We were both, I think, we were both stoked on the album, but I think we weren't 100% sold, but we were also like, well, we finally did it, right?
Yeah.
And then about the time we were like getting into the studio, he found out that his girlfriend was expecting a baby.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then what was super cool, because we were both a little bit iffy about some of the lyrics for some of the songs. Because we're also like, okay, we're in our 30s. Like, are we really going to be, there's certain stuff that you're like, Blink-182 is a lot of fun, but also I'm like, dude, you're like, why are you talking about stuff like you're still 25 years old?
Yeah, true. I love Blink-182.
Me too. So do I.
Love them. But
Me too.
Yeah.
There's just things like that it like doesn't, it feels a little weird when you're talking about the stuff that you're not actually doing anymore.
I know.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, and they still do that. Like, yeah. The recent videos are like high school kids.
Totally. Which I'm like, that's fun. It's great. I get the hesitation to do something different, because who wants to make that same kind of music, about fatherhood? I don't know. Like, we saw Green Day try to do it, and like nobody liked that, right?
Yeah.
So I think they're in a tricky position. But basically, when he found out that he was expecting a daughter, I thought it was very cool. He called me kind of nervous one day, I could tell.
Okay.
And he was like, I rewrote all the songs about being excited as to be a dad.
Oh,
and I was like,
cool.
That's beautiful, Bradley.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Like, that's so
amazing.
gorgeous.
That is incredible.
And it was almost a year later that we went back into the studio to re-record it.
That's great.
And we kept some of the like we kept some of the foundation of a lot of the songs. But it was cool because if you compare the first versions of those songs to the second,
it's very different.
I play drums. It's very different, because my drums went from being like sad death marches to being like fun, because
because it was an exciting.
Well, and I'd gone to therapy, and I'd like been taking better care of myself.
Okay.
I wasn't.
That's great. That's incredible. So you were at a different spot in your life.
I was in a much better place. I think we both felt better about the lyrics and the vocals.
Great.
One of the things that the doctor I go to like a naturopath, and she's been amazing.
That's good.
Special thanks to Dr. Kang in Seattle.
That's amazing.
One of our first sessions, she was like, look, your heart chakra is like pretty closed off. She was like, but your expression chakra is totally closed. She was like, ask me questions like, when you meditate, do you do ohms? And I was like, no, never. She was like, do you sing? And I was like, absolutely not. And so when I sang, when we were recording that album, that's two of the songs are out now, and I'm singing on both of them, just backups.
Yeah.
But like, I literally never sang Happy Birthday out loud before. Like, I'd been lip syncing it my whole life.
Really?
Yes, because I didn't like how I was scared of like, what if I don't like how I sound?
Yeah.
Like, to me, the biggest stressor of kindergarten was when they would be taking roll and you had to say here. And
I can feel that.
I would be like, just like trying to like clear my throat so it didn't come out crazy sounding.
I can feel that for sure. Like, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been cool. One thing that's taken a lot of pressure off is that my bandmate is an incredible animator.
Okay.
And so he's
the one making the videos?
Yes.
Great. I was going to ask that.
So
like,
good?
who made that video? That's incredible.
And what's crazy is like, he hit me up as he was making our characters, like the character of me, the character of him. And he was like, are you okay with your hair? Do you like your outfit? Is your skin tone okay? Like these kinds of questions.
Yeah.
And I made those choices, and then it was crickets. I heard nothing.
Okay.
And I wasn't even minding it. I was all right, whatever, dude. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, you need to animate our videos. Write all of our lyrics and animate our videos. And then one day he's like, hey, I finished the video and I sent it to you. And it's
already done. Like
already done.
Everything.
Completely done.
Wow.
That's cool. He did such a good job.
He did amazing. He did amazing.
It was so incredible. And one thing I also love, I think, women, a lot of times people see like when we're in a band, like, oh, it's really good there's a girl in the band because then you'll have sex appeal. And that like your band's like unique because it has a girl drummer, right?
Yeah, geez.
I'm really glad he didn't capitalize on that at all.
Yeah, no way.
And I've like joked that he's like made me like less hot as a cartoon.
Okay.
Which like, and it's not like me sitting here being like, oh, I'm so attractive, but like.
No, I understand what you're saying.
He made my posture kind of bad.
Yeah.
Like he made my posture like this, and like normally if I didn't have to hold up to the mic right now, like I sit up very straight, and like he kind of gave me like a flat butt, and I was just like, thank you, thank you for making me like a person and not like something like a sex object cartoon to help people go like, whoa, who's this girl? Like, because I would much rather someone just likes the music
Yeah, that's what it should be about.
Right.
Like, it's a band, it's music. It's not like, dude, you're not going to have sex with the drummer or with the singer.
It's not like the Pussycat Dolls where it's like, you know, 3/4 sex appeal, 1/4 music. And so, yeah, that stuff is really fun. And I think we're going to keep it animated because also, I'm sure you understand this, like, as somebody who's a photographer, like, I don't want someone making a music video of me unless I really like their style and what they're doing.
Of course.
Like, I don't want to be on camera unless I fully trust the photographer.
Of course. I would freak out if I'm in front of the camera. I'm like, no, that's why I'm a photographer. I'm behind the freaking camera.
Especially as myself. Like, I'm fine being in front of the camera when I'm acting because I'm somebody else.
Okay.
If I have to think about, like, oh, here's a permanent video of the faces I make when I'm playing drums. Like, are you kidding me? What a nightmare. I don't want to have to wonder if my nostrils are flaring or like if I have like a lazy eye because I'm focused or like whatever. So so I'm really excited about that, and
that's great.
And that there's no photography involved.
That's amazing, and especially because your bandmate is an amazing illustrator.
Yeah, he's
that
really,
is so
really
cool.
great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And have you guys released the entire album?
We haven't yet. No, we've done 2 songs, and we're releasing a remix that our friend Brandon did.
Okay.
He goes by Funk, and which is like PHNK. So we're releasing that fairly soon.
Nice.
You know, I didn't. With the shutdown, I was not going to be like, let's also release our album.
Yeah.
And then also with just how, like, with everyone now focusing so much finally on racism in America.
Yeah.
I'm like, it feels very wrong to go like,
I see that.
Here, I made a happy album.
I see that. Totally.
Yeah. And I think it's funny because I think my family, I don't think my parents listen to I know my dad sometimes listens to my podcast. But
Nice.
most of my family doesn't. And I think they think that I like talk about things they're not going to agree with.
Okay.
And I think similarly with the band.
Yeah.
My mom was very shocked at the kind of music it is because I think she expected to, because mostly what I listen to is like pretty intense music. Like I don't listen to chill music really.
Yeah.
I'd say the chillest music I listen to like the Sugar Cubes, which is like Bjork's band from before she was like Bjork, and I listen to Bjork. Like that's all chill stuff. But mostly I listen to like a lot of, I don't know, like I mean a lot of Run the Jewels, Rage Against the Machine, Immortal Technique, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think my family was shocked that it's like a happy, nice, nice music with no cursing.
Yeah.
So it feels cool to make something happy and nice because I always thought if I'd be in a band, it would be, you know, like a for real like rock band, or that I would do like some kind of like drum and DJ, or like be a drummer for like a hip hop artist. I never thought that I'd be in like a fun, happy band. Okay. So it feels extra not appropriate to then be, you know, like, we're Latinx, but we're white. Yeah. You know, like we both have those roots, but we are white. That it's like, hey, you know, like this can take a back seat. Like I'm not trying to be like, oh, all this stuff is going on and like make sure you're protesting. Also listen to my album.
I see that. Yeah. That's understandable.
Yeah.
And to finalize the podcast, like where can people find you, your work, your band, your podcast?
Oh, all on Instagram. I think is probably Instagram and Twitter. Like I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. My name is spelled Lynae, and the last name is Cook. My podcast is called BTS Podcast, which stands for Behind the Scenes.
Which is super cool.
Thank you. So I talk to people about like how they do, or like how they do what they do. I would definitely, since I assume most people listening to this are photographers, I do recommend listening to the episode 40 with Andre Leroux, because the tips he gives, like I would have gotten into this myself on like how I price work and stuff, but I think Andre did such a good job.
I have to listen to that one.
Yeah, I'll send you the link because I think it's a really good layout of like, oh yeah, these are the right questions we should be asking before we give someone a rate. Yeah, of course. Which is really important. And I don't know if we talk about it, but I think one thing that I've learned to always ask is like, when do you expect the final photos? Yeah, it's super important. Yeah. Super important. Right, because I'm like, if you want them tomorrow, there's going to be a fee for that, let me tell you. Yep. And so if you look up hashtag BTS podcast, you can find it. And then it's just at BTS the podcast across socials. And the band is called Breakfast Tacos. And we're, you know, the podcast and the band are across all streaming services. Cool. So feel free to check it out.
That's amazing. And I'll put all this information also in the info for the podcast episode.
Thank you so much, Neto. This was great.
Lynae. Yeah, thank you. And I think we kept it pretty safe.
I agree. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to Coffee with Photographers. I'm sorry if my voice doesn't sound great, but I was wearing a mask when we were doing the podcast in a park just to stay safe. And thank you so much for listening to the second episode with Lynae Cook. Make sure you follow her on Instagram, Facebook, all of those social media channels, and make sure you check out the other episodes of this podcast. You can find them at www.coffeewithphotographers.com or Spotify, Pandora, any of those podcast platforms. See you in the next episode.